Okay, folks, so next week, Unit 6 is due, and this is a unit on conceptual photography. Let's take a look at what's involved in this unit. And we can see here, number one, actually the reading and quiz should be first. I should reorder that a little bit. Because you have some basic reading, PowerPoint that I created, and then a quiz over that foundational information has to do with everything from genres of photography to some aesthetic principles, etc. So all of that is sort of foundational reading. You are going to come up with a project of conceptual photography. And some people say, well, that term is a misnomer because all photography is conceptual photography because there's an idea behind it, right? But in this case, we can see from the example that we just had that you analyze so well, sometimes concepts can be more original and complex than others. And certainly that's what we're looking for you to do next week, is to push the boundaries. A lot of conceptual photography is staged or planned in advance because there's a concept, right? And so here's a really cool lesson. It's a video of a student documenting himself doing a conceptual photography project, and his mom goes out with him and helps him, and how he sort of choreographs it, plans it, what it means to him, etc. So I think that's a really good video to watch. And then you can see the resulting image here. I also want you to take a look at some inspiration. Here we have a discussion board on conceptual photography. And in this case, we are going to look at women. How women are captured, represented oftentimes. And this is examples of photography that undermines what we call the male gaze. And I spelled that out on the board with this thing that no longer writes, but it did just a few seconds ago. So I'm trying. There we go. Here we go. G-A-Z-E. All right. Anybody ever heard of this term, the male gaze? Emily.
Oh, it's basically like when, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it in like a way that makes sense. So for instance, in like movies and stuff, you have like the Avengers, right? And so you see all like the action shots for everything, and then you look at Black Widow and it's just like a grass. But like, or for instance, if you have in magazines, it rarely shows necessarily, as we were saying before, like woman's face, it's just her body, or in like weird poses that no one actually does. And it's meant to not necessarily see them as people, but rather as something decorative.
To be, yes. Yeah. Okay, so to be savored.
Yeah.
By specifically an ideally heterosexual male viewer, right? And this is important because you might say, well, no, that's kind of old-fashioned idea that everything's made for men to view. But let me ask you this. When's the last time you ladies have been into Victoria's Secret? Raise a hand. Go ahead. I go all the time. Love Emily's. Okay. Not so much, right? Emily's like, well, when I go in there, first of all, I love I love Victoria's Secret angels. Victoria's Secret, yes, they are the angel. Yes, okay. They're gorgeous. As someone who is pansexual, I would take them home. Okay. All right, I had several women in the last class who said they'd do the same. So don't be laughing about that, Emily.
No, I agree with you.
Your secret dream. Oh, she's agreeing. You're agreeing. See that? Okay. So here's the thing. I go into Victoria's Secret, and these angels are all like they're trying to seduce me. It's like, why? Because I think most women who go into Victoria's Secret are probably a little more hetero than I am. Okay? Just a guess. And yet, we're all being seduced. We're all being seduced. Right? Why? Who's the target audience for these angels? Who is the target audience for Victoria's Secret products? Isabel.
Like a guy to see you in them, like guys. Like it's for girls, but it's for girls who want like male attention, almost kind of.
Okay, so the target audience is
women. Is like
heterosexual women. But okay, so if that's the case, then why are those heterosexual women being seduced by beautiful women?
Well, because they're like, if you wear our stuff, you can look like this too.
Okay, and I would take it one step further. That we are so conditioned into that mentality that we've actually taken on the view of the heterosexual male perspective ourselves. So if I go shopping, or you go shopping, if you are heterosexual female, you go shopping with a, like I'm not, so, okay, so you can ignore this part. And you go with a girlfriend and come out in clothing and say, ta-da, how do I look? Are you really asking her, what is she? How does she think you look? Or are you asking her, well, how do you think I look if you were a guy looking at me? Right? So we have internalized, the argument goes, we have internalized this gaze to the extent that there's even research that suggests women are attracted to other women through being conditioned to look at advertising that is seductive to them, but is trying to seduce that surveyor inside of them that is male. Pretty freaky, huh? That is pretty complex. You want to talk about some complexity, right? Okay, so what we want to try to experiment our way out of is that, in this class at least, to see what we can do otherwise. Because we've, done a lot of like, oh, glam shots, this shot, that shot, all that side of thing. But let's take a look at some of these shots. Oops. Okay, so we know that this doesn't work. Try again. See if I can get there. Yes. Oh, this is also a great short video working with light. Okay, so we come down here and I'm just gonna click it. 15 mind-blowing photographers and female photographers redefining contemporary femininity. And I really want you to take a look at these and read about them, because you're going to see some very interesting concepts around representation of women that gets much more complex and nuanced and interesting than what we're used to seeing. And that takes many different perspectives and has many different subjects. So take a look at that, and also take a look at the last meal, which is fascinating as well, because it is the first time that a photographer had the concept of photographing, setting and photographing the last meals of particular people on death row. And why is this odd? Why is this an odd thing to do? Why does this immediately, intuitively strike us as paradoxical that we have a last meal, all this food?
Because it's kind of going with the term like the Last Supper, which is like a religious reference to Jesus' Last Supper, and he's like looked at as like a spiritual figure that people look up to and religious. And if you're doing it with like people on death row, like they typically probably aren't someone you're looking up to. So it's kind of like almost like the flip side of the positive.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, this particular artist, which whom you'll read about, doesn't say what the crime was that they committed, but gives their last words and their last meal. So we can assume in the last few minutes, we don't have to discuss it thoroughly, but we can assume that she is against the death penalty, because if you look up what some of these folks did, it's kind of scary, right? But the idea that we have bizarre rituals around killing people, right? And that is what we're doing, we're killing people, and yet we sterilize that, and we also have this idea of this last meal, which I think she very much is implying, alluding to Last Supper, right? Sort of a sacrificial, you know, act of people, sacrificing people for, you know, so what is weird about having food be the focus? Yeah, Emma?
Well, you can look at it in two different ways, but the first thing that I thought of was that food is something that like sustains life, and it's heavily ironic to go out of your way to give someone a special like last meal, because it's not gonna do them any good. It's not gonna keep them alive. But also too, like food is something that we all universally need, and so it's something that is very relatable, and it kind of makes us human almost. And so also those like last words too are also a very human thing. So I think it imprints upon us that we are killing other humans. Like this is government sanctioned murder, which is maybe not, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So food being, as you put it, life-sustaining, right before we are killing someone. And then the food that she photographs is just incredible. I mean, you can see some of these plates are like 20 fried eggs. Yeah. One of them is just a little salad. You know, one is an entire bag of Jolly Rogers. I mean, there's just so many different things that people request as their last request of life-sustaining and also joy, you know. So these are examples of conceptual photographs. And the last but not least, you can take a look at past students' conceptual photographs that they've done in this class. And hopefully you get some ideas that way. Do you have any questions? I'm excited to see what you do. So we have here a discussion board, and we have an upload of your project, and we have a reading and a quiz. Those are the deliverables, quote unquote, for next week. If there are no questions, thank you so much.